The next session, I think, is one that's really interesting, and it's been touched on already this morning quite a few times. It's the future of all-day dining, or what basically reinvent. I can't remember the exact topic I wrote, but it was brilliant. And so I'm handing you over to an excellent panel. We've got Duncan Fraser-Smith, who's the Vice President of F&B for the First Group. Yeah, clap, clap, clap. And Duncan is working quite closely in some of the outlets, including BARBARY, with Joey. So Joey's the genius behind BARBARY and the Maine Oyster Bar. So Joey, if you'd like to join us. Thank you. And then last, and definitely not least, we have Marloes from Kerten Hospitality. Now, Kerten Hospitality has a couple really exciting projects in the region at the moment, which I will let her tell you a little bit more about. And they're really rethinking the way that they create projects. So we're very much looking forward to this session. Thank you, guys.
Welcome, everyone.
Hopla.
Thank you. Terrific. Okay, so one of those interesting topics, because it's, when it comes to investors and operators, it's one of those outlets that is a must-have. We kind of need to have an all-day dining, and it tends to cost us quite a lot of money when we invest in them, because we attach it really to the production kitchen of the hotel. And then it's a question of, well, what do we do with it? How do we make that work? So I'm really happy to have Joey and Marloes here on the stage to talk to us about it. I mean, Marloes, I might start with you, given the fact that you've got, 3 hotels up and running now currently, and 3,500 keys in the pipeline at the moment. How important is creating a successful all-day dining concept for you in those hotels?
Good question. I think the F&B element, but I think we've been hearing a lot about that. I think one of the greatest challenges, I'm not sure is just the investment and the cost, is finding the people to run it. So I think the human factor, I'm not sure how much we've heard about that, is a great challenge. So I think with that challenge comes, do we go for our own? Do we stock up on more F&B and stuff, or do we just give it away? And I think in our case, we love to give it away. I'm a great believer of brand collaborations in any way or form. And I was reading about this digital hotel in Japan. So how much robot parts can we bring in to the equation to take part of the human part out, I guess. So to answer your question, it's important because we have these people coming in and out, and at the end of the day, we need to feed them. But I'm not sure it's the future of all-day dining or the past of all-day dining.
Fair point. Joey, from your point of view, I'm sure you go around, you're looking at developing restaurants, here, globally. You see these all-day dining venues that potentially can do 600 or 700 people for breakfast in the morning, and then you'll come back in at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and there are 20 people sitting in a massive vacuous space. Don't you just cry out and go, give it to me, I'll fix it?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a better use for space.
Yeah.
The all-day dining that I've seen in hotels tend to be excessively large in terms of their back office space or back of house space. I could certainly think of a million ways that I would rather do, use that. There's this big trend in London right now in competitive socializing. I mean, you go into concepts like flight room and junkyard golf and bowling, and I mean all that basement space. I'd rather use it for that and have kind of game rooms that you think that people can use. Granted, you do need to have sufficient back of house space to feed people, but I can only speak as an independent restaurateur, and I could do breakfast in my all-day dining.
Yep.
Essentially, it's an all-day dining concept. I could create a kind of a continental buffet. I was in Brazil this year, and I stayed at the Fasano, and they did a fantastic job of breakfast in what was an independent restaurant.
Yeah.
I think the key is that it has to be a unique concept that caters to locals and the guests of the hotel alike, and it needs to have maybe its own separate entrance. To create that kind of separation with the hotel, but there's no reason why an independent restaurant could not do breakfast.
I mean, I think.
Do you need external guests? Like, I'm just thinking this now. If I think, because your concepts are cool, And they're in good, no, but they're in good locations. So if I think of some of the projects we have, like, for example, we're doing a project in Kuwait, it's 80 kilometers out of the city, ladies only beach club, great, okay, you know that's going to work because it's something sexy and different and people will travel for it. But what do you do at the moment that you have to feed a lot of people in a more challenging or remote location where you don't maybe have that outside guest profile coming in?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a good point. I mean, I primarily am looking for spaces.
Yeah.
There's a vast amount of spaces in hotels currently that I think could be planned and utilized better. You know, I'm always looking at ground floor locations, separate entrances, great terrace spaces. You know, the last panel mentioned, you know, pools, servicing pools, or pool bars. I mean, as an operator, I'm always looking for these amazing opportunities, and they're very difficult to find.
I think, actually, just coming to that point, you mentioned ground floor
That's crazy,
locations.
actually. You know, we're all sitting there going like, I can't find an operator.
Yeah, but
I can't find a
and
cool
yet
brand.
Well, because hotels want to keep them for themselves. I mean, I don't.
Well, no, hang on. You and I know that we disagree on that.
True.
We do disagree.
But we
on
didn't
that.
create an all-day dining space
Yet.
yet.
But I think the fact is
well, we
critical.
can talk.
Oh, yeah, you guys can talk as well. Yeah, there's a signing rights, but that's fine. But I think the point is critical. I mean, outside operators are looking for ground floor space. And what we end up doing as investors and hotel developers is we dedicate all this ground floor space to an all-day dining venue that's probably, in reality, prime retail space within our venue. And we back it up with this massive production kitchen that really only does, you know, bagged eggs and lots of, you know, veal bacon and chicken sausages and all of that in the morning. I'm sorry. I'm being as blunt as I can. But at the end of the day, that's not what that restaurant, that's not what the ethos or the soul of that restaurant is about. And you've got a great example, Marloes, of you've kind of taken a franchise and put it into your all-day dining going forward. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, actually, the owner of the Jeddah project has taken a franchise of Baker and Spice. So they manage with us the first year or almost 2 years, and then we take over the management. So it's almost a franchise, if you like. So one of the things that we said for the project is, I absolutely don't like the buffet breakfast, and I don't think we can do such a great job in prime location in Jeddah, where you have a high traffic of local high-end residential people. You know, what do we do? It's the same, you know, the sausages, the eggs, which people are looking for something local. And I think if you have somebody who really truly believes in the F&B they run it very different. They run a different P&L, they look at food cost in a very different matter. And so we said, okay, let's take this brand collaboration to a totally new level. And I think we're going to offer people a breakfast that you would go out for, like your weekend breakfast. You know, and it doesn't matter at what time of the day it is, because I think this is the other part, is where we still do between 6:30 and 10:30, or between 7 and 11, and everybody comes at the last half an hour just because you don't want to get out of bed or you still want to get something. But I think with a concept like that, because they're built to do this all day, we don't think in all day, we think in shifts. So it's always, the operation is always built around the operation and never around the customer. So I think with this, it will give the entire hotel experience a very different, you get a totally different experience.
I think the thing is we've got to bring operators into this conversation, because I mean I have discussions quite a lot of the time, and most recently, you know, we've built our hotel as the first group in Dubai Marina, and we don't have an all-day dining restaurant. We have 2 signature restaurants, and we have a dedicated bar, but we don't have an all-day dining restaurant. And so having that discussion with the operator going, no, you don't understand. There will not be eggs in a chafing dish on a buffet. There will not be, you know, different chafing dishes and different hot foods sitting out there sweating, getting bad. That's not the brand that we're going for. And I thought I was fighting an uphill battle. And then I saw what Rove Hotels has done. Now, I don't know how many people here have stayed in a Rove Hotel. You put your hands up if you can. Yep, we've got a couple here, which is great. Now, the Rove model, I think, is the next generation of what former all-day dining used to be, where you go in, there are these magnificent ambient displays in the venue, which after breakfast are no longer ambient displays anymore. They're communal tables or they're co-working spaces. But all of your hot breakfast, everything that you order, is a la carte. And they make it to order. Granted, the garnish is the same and the accompaniments are the same, but if you want scrambled eggs, they make it to order. If you want poached eggs, it's been sous vide'd and it's finished and it's served to you. Now that, to me, I think is a way that we can change the mindset of what the expectations of the guests are and go, yes, you're still going to have your hot breakfast, but opposed to what you've been used to for the last 30 or 40 years, we're actually going to give you a product that is better and more in keeping with a brand-aligned restaurant concept. Joey, what are your thoughts?
I mean, definitely what Rove has done is suitable for the 3-star budget hotel. I mean, the idea there is you go buy your soap at the mini mart,
Yep.
you go in to have your meal prepared for you. It's very suitable for that style of concept. I don't think hotels spend enough time master planning their tenant mix, and I don't think that the entire concept of the hotel and the F&B works together sometimes. I will say that when we opened up at the Doubletree Hilton in JBR back in 2016 or 15, I have to give it to them. They had quite some vision in the concepts that they created. Ramasaki, Stereo Arcade, the Maine. They were all kind of your premium casual concepts for that 4-star brand. It kind of all worked together. But in essence, I much more would prefer that a hotel would create more suitable brands. I look at brands like the Ace Hotel. I look at Soho House. I look at Chiltern and Balazs properties. I look at these type of projects and I say, Hoxton, their restaurants belong in those hotels, in those spaces.
Yep.
Whereas in Dubai, you've got these landlords create these massive spaces, first of all, that are far too big, and then have to find operators to fill them up. And it doesn't necessarily work as a homogeneous...
I think for the investors here in the room, one of the discussion we were having before is the all-day dining actually, if you back it onto your production kitchen, is one of the most expensive venues you ever invest in a hotel. And we were looking at it and going, I mean, in some cases it can be anywhere, don't quote me, between sort of 10 million plus.
I mean, that's ridiculous.
I know, it's ridiculous, but this is what investors
I could build 2 restaurants for that money.
You could probably build 3.
Yeah.
So the idea is that the direction to go in? Do we need to look at it as going, take an all-day dining space. Let's say you've got a 400-key hotel. You need to be able to have 270, 280 odd seats to pass DTCM regulations. But that can be made up of multiple restaurants. It doesn't just need to be one. But in the back of your mind, I've got 400 keys, 1.5 stays. I need to be able to serve, 650 to 700 people at 90% occupancy at breakfast in the morning. How do we maybe look at putting the production kitchen at the back and having feed off that some different concepts? Marloes, I mean, that's something that you've looked at, is it not?
Yeah, actually we never wanted to do F&B, and we started doing F&B just because we couldn't find the right brands that would actually work with us versus here's my brand, buy.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we developed was the brand is called Food Souk. So it's just it can be a small, it can be a large space, but it's small units. You can change the branding, and everything's produced from one central kitchen. So from that one central kitchen, you can do whatever you want. But we would only put that into prime locations from where we can do more out of that kitchen than just serve the hotel. And I have to say, I was saying this to you earlier, but I thought it was very funny. I saw this Deliveroo kitchen yesterday, and it's in JLT. I've never seen a cloud kitchen. Well, I've talked about it, but I've never seen it. But okay, I am not sure I would be delighted to get my food from there if I would know by the time it's delivered. But if you think about it, I mean, you say it's such a massive investment.
It is, yeah.
For a very short time. We always look inside, we never look outside.
That's
Everybody's delivering, and we're still like, oh, how many more guests can stay during the day, and they shouldn't be going out, and they should come back for lunch and come back for dinner. Who does that?
I mean, I agree, but also I look at the number of hotels that are out there where you see Zomato, Uber Eats, Deliveroo, motorcycles parked up 10 in a row in the front of the hotel, where guests are sitting inside having burgers and fried chicken delivered to their suites from branded, companies. And I think to myself, you've got this big kitchen. Forget room service. Come up with a delivery menu. Give the people that work in your room service, hot packs rather than room service trolleys with black vests and bow ties. Guests are happy to take care of that themselves. Why aren't we maximizing that investment in that production kitchen and actually doing 5 or 6 different takeaway options within a hotel environment.
I mean, if there's delivery trucks coming to your hotel,
You've got a problem.
I think that, I mean, I can only speak as an independent restaurateur, and I don't really rely on the guests in the hotel. I'm always thinking, how are we servicing the market? Are we filling a gap in the market? Are we able to attract locals? Do we have a concept that's compelling enough for us to be busy? I think in terms of servicing guests in the hotel, I think definitely the food has to be part of the entertainment. I mean, I'm sure they would much rather eat food on a plate than in a plastic box.
Oh, in a plastic box, yeah.
But when you work with people, do you go by percentages, or do you actually, because you're an independent operator and you run your own P&L, you actually demand, or however you like to say this, negotiate, agree, whatever, that you can run it as a standalone restaurant and you just need to bring in a certain amount of profit or revenue, or how do you, because
I mean,
when we look at it, you know,
it's
very different.
I mean, there's several ways we could do it. We could talk about this.
Yeah,
I
go
think
ahead.
definitely a hybrid model can work
It's
as
the best,
well.
yeah.
Let the hotel do what they do best. I think the hotel has great purchasing power, amazing back office systems. Sometimes we need to kind of work a little hard at the beginning to start talking the same language, because independent restaurateurs operate in a different way. Our P&Ls look very different. The way we report looks very different. I think one of the main challenges that we had at the beginning was the way inventory is taken, because hotels sort of cut it off at the end of the month, and I never understood that. Like, why is it not?
Well, the 26th of the
I mean,
month
there's still
as opposed
food
to
in the, fridge,
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I don't know, why are you not
But
counting?
we got there.
Yeah, we got there.
We did get there.
We did get there. I think that it's just, you just have to, you have to have a good working relationship, and you have to want to, and you have to understand the value that each party brings to the table. And I think that's key.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, using Joey and our example is a great one. Is, everything that happens at BARBARY is from the brainchild of Joey Ghazal. There's no two ways about that. We're basically there to support him deliver what he wanted to deliver, because we believe in the concept. And I think that at the end of the day, when it comes to standalone, which is not this topic, sorry, Jen, I'm diverting for a second. When it comes to standalone, you've got to believe in your concept. But I also believe that same mentality has to be applied to your 3-meal restaurant, because if you just do it for the sake of doing soldiers in a row because you need to cater to 400 people and serve them as quickly as you can in the morning, then you don't have belief in your concept. You don't really, it's a factory for food production. And what a waste of space that you could sweat harder to generate better ROI and better income if you gave it greater thought. I mean, I look at some great examples in the US now where big hotels are converting their all-day spaces into food halls. Yeah. Now is that something that, it's been a trend that's been talked about in Dubai now for the last, 4 or 5 years. Nothing's really happened yet. Is that a direction that we could look at going, you know what? There's an opportunity for us to actually put in a fantastic, food hall, aka timeout markets in
Lisbon.
Yeah, Lisbon. Yeah, exactly. But that sort of event where people can come and do their pop-ups throughout the day, but we utilize all of that.
Yeah, if that's the concept, then so be it. And you can create co-working spaces, and you could create a cafe element. And Todd English did a great job of it at the park. But if that's the concept, then just commit to the concept.
But this I agree.
Instead
because
of having
this is where we all say, oh yeah, let's do all of these concepts, and then they're all there, but there is nothing. There's nobody creating
I think
a community
the issue with
or
all-day
connection.
dining is the hotels do not commit to the concept.
Yeah.
Essentially, it's just a room with a buffet. What is the concept?
Correct. Now
Giving it a name is not enough.
No, I agree with you. How important, though, with the people here in this room, operators and investors, how important is it to have the F&B guys, the people that are actually the ones that are going to execute these? I mean, let's be realistic. They've got to be on board 3 years before the place opens, because you want to go and say, guys, that's way too much space. Your kitchen's way too big.
Right.
Your storage is way too big. Before it gets to a point where we come in and go, what am I going to do with this now? I've inherited this massive space. What am I going to do with it? Here you go, Joey. Go on, take it. It's yours. I don't want it anymore. And that's the thing. I think we come on board so late in the game now.
Right.
And I think it's crucial, especially for investors, to know that you need to bring people in early to shape the value of the space and to shape the the mix of what you're
Yeah,
putting
and one of the big things that I've been championing for a long time is I believe in smaller footprint restaurants, but those smaller footprint restaurants need to have adequate power, adequate chilled water, adequate gas, adequate extraction, and the problem is that what they do is they end up giving you these ginormous spaces, 400-seat restaurants without enough, sort of utilities. So it's this very odd kind of pairing. And you're right, it is in the master planning stage.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But the master planning, in a way, is also committing to something. I mean, you come back to your point. I don't think you need to have all of these teams there for very long. I think once you've made a commitment, but a lot of the studies that are still done, and I love it, people still ask me this all the time, how much is the percentage that you need for back of house? What's the percentage you need for F&B? If I run the percentages on all of my projects, we don't fit into that graph. So I am sure it used to be like that. But right now we have service apartments with hotel and an F&B space. You have hotel only with F&B. You have a lot of F&B, very little rooms. The mix changes so much. You have external people, only internal people. I think if you come back to your point, if you take a decision and you build on that decision, it's very different than building something that we'll figure out later what it's going to be.
Which is the mentality when it comes to all-day dining at the moment. And that's, I think, the point that we're trying to get across is, for a specialty restaurant, we might wait until 12 months before opening, before we go, this is the trend, we're here, this is the direction we're going in. With an all-day dining, it's been shaped a long time previously. So I think the points that we're coming up with are good. Do we look at it and go, it needs to serve breakfast, so we open the shutters up, all 3 spaces are open for breakfast in the morning, and then for lunch and dinner they are independent outlets all supported by one kitchen, option number 1. Go.
But your breakfast, we're still talking about the same breakfast time. We're 3 hours the difference. My breakfast at the moment would be at 2 o'clock in the afternoon if I would follow my normal eating pattern.
Yeah.
Right.
So the amount of people that are traveling, we're doing this to ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, breakfast, you're talking about 10 items with a small table of baked goods. I mean, you're investing all of this money and all this service just for breakfast.
The reason being, and I'm not a hotelier, so I will never claim to be that, but the reason being is hoteliers, as I know, put packages online, on OTAs, where they say you have a room including breakfast.
But what is
the
breakfast?
customer's expectation, just to give you the feedback, is that means that they can come down in the morning, anytime before 10:30 and generally after 6.
So we're talking about a frittata and an omelette and scrambled, some salmon, some avocado,
How
a couple
we
of
do
baked
it
goods.
is different. I agree.
But
But the way it's being done now is what needs to change.
Right. I'm pretty sure if you look at it proportionally, it certainly doesn't require all that space.
Oh, yes. Well, come to Trip.
Not if you're going to be empty from noon onwards.
I agree, but come to Trip by Wyndham on a Thursday morning when we're 80% occupancy and see 1,300 people come through between 8
Again, it
and
depends
10.
on the property.
Exactly. So, and that's the thing. And they're there for 5 minutes. They eat, they go.
Right.
It's that kind of thing. So it is challenging. Finally, and I think it's important to bring this up, it is the least most sustainable outlet in any hotel by far, purely because of the wastage. And I think there was a session just before on food wastage, but purely based on the amount of wastage. So as once again, as investors and people that are looking at our bottom lines and looking at our profitability, we need to design these spaces so that they are not as wasteful as they are these days. I mean, and once again, buffets are a huge source of waste unless you've got a system in place. I think we were talking about Winnow before, where you can manage this, but a lot of places don't. So it needs to have that, how do I put it, that independent mentality applied to hotel all-day dining going forward, I think. And we need to get rid of the term all-day dining because it just conjures up such a, I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for, Marloes? Negative image?
But brasseries are all-day dining.
Brasseries sounds
A
much
bistro's
better.
all-day dining. That's what it is. When you go to a brasserie, you can have breakfast in the morning, and then it switches to a lunch menu. That's all it is.
It's very true. Guys, we've got about a minute and a half left. I'm just going to check and see before we wrap up if there are any questions in the audience whatsoever. If not, that means they're all adopted everything that we've said and they're making their strategic plans right now.
Right over there.
Oh, we have one at the back here. Karen. Microphone's coming. Hang on.
Hi there. The way I look at breakfast, I want to be in the restaurant and out as quickly as possible. Now, you either have the buffet where you can just run in, grab something, eat it really quickly and go. You were discussing Deliveroo. Why isn't there some capacity to have an app where you order your breakfast 10 minutes before you're going to get there, then turn up, you know it's going to be waiting for you, you eat it, you go, and that allows for your a la carte coverage where you're not also getting the wastage?
I stayed at the Hoxton a couple of months ago, and actually on the door of the hotel room, they actually, it's just this card, and you can opt to have a small bag attached to your door, which has in it the essentials. So it has in it a croissant, it has in it a bar of some kind, a banana, yogurt, and essentially they just, in the morning, they put it on your room so you can grab it and go. And there's a coffee on the way out. So it seemed like the most genius thing to me. The simplest thing to me, because you're right, people just want to sort of be on the move all the time.
I think, to that point, Karen, I think technology is definitely a way forward. I don't think that we've tapped into that enough yet because, I mean, as you've probably seen, when you come down to breakfast in a busy hotel and there are 100 people queued up in the lobby trying to get in, they may have placed their order 10 minutes ago, but they still can't get a seat in the venue because everyone else has decided to come at the same time. So I'll quickly ask if there's any other question. Otherwise, I would please ask you to thank Marloes, Joey, for a great conversation. Thank you so much, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks.